I think during my tenure in the UN, what I'm most proud of was really starting the global campaign against single-use plastic. Indeed, I also worked very closely with Prime Minister Modi.
How do you see India in the last 10 years, which has just dominated the entire renewable energy space?
India is now a global leader in the climate talks in Dubai. Prime Minister Modi was giving the number one spot at the opening of the conference because everyone realized the importance of India for reaching the climate goals. So whether it will be the battery makers making the cars, or maybe the Googles and Amazons and Alibabas and Tencent, to make American and Chinese example, making the cars, we don't know at this stage.
But then why doesn't Nitin Gadkari goes on a hydrogen car to the parliament? Why doesn't he go on an EV? Because if EV is the very no-brainer, any advice for Elon Musk or Tesla that you want to, anything that they should be doing, any message? Because we'll post this on their platform as well. Tandoori chicken or butter chicken?
Tandoori chicken.
India or Norway?
India.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Journey podcast. Today we have someone very, very special. Someone who in the last couple of years I have looked up to in the field of climate change and sustainability. We have MR.ERIK SOLHEIM. MR.ERIK is a global leader on environmental and very passionate about sustainability, climate change. He was an ex-Norwegian minister, and he was worked with the United Nations as well. MR.ERIK, thank you for doing this, and it's an absolute delight. We've been in touch on Twitter through a common friend, and I can't tell you how grateful we are to have you on this episode.
I'm so happy to be in Chandigarh, which of course is a very famous city with its architecture and history, but also to be with you because I believe that India, Bharat, will be a world leader in the green revolution, and you are part of that.
Thank you. MR.ERIK, we'll quickly, before we deep dive into your passion of sustainability and climate change, can you just go through the early days? Where did you spend with, and just take us through your journey in the early days?
No, I was born and grown up in Oslo, the capital of Norway. It's a very small town from an Indian perspective, but also a bit of a unique city because 20 minutes by tram in all directions from Oslo city center, you're out in the forest. And you can go for a walk and you can see the animals, and of course in winter you can go skiing for hours and hours. So it's a nice and now very green city. And from there, I started also taking a lot of interest in the rest of the world, in India, in China, America, understanding that, of course, Norway is so small that if you want to be into something which is bigger in the world, you need to take interest in the main players.
And what's the population of Norway?
5 million.
5 million, so
So
correct.
it's just a small part of Punjab. Yeah.
It's a very small part of Punjab.
Exactly.
Correct. But when you compare someone like India and Europe, I keep saying this, India is also like Europe. It's like 28 countries within one country because every state is so diverse in India, is so different. There are different people, different language. So I see that India is like Europe, but, there's like 28 countries within one country only.
No, absolutely. I mean, first of all, the population of India is not just like Europe. It's like Europe, North and South America combined, and variety when it comes to languages, customs, food, religion is enormous in Bharat. However, what is really interesting is that still there is a very strong feeling of unity. I mean, the distance from Kashmir to Tamil Nadu is very long when it comes to the way Hinduism is practiced, or the food, or or language. Tamil and Hindi is completely separate languages. Still, everyone feel Indian. Yes, you are Tamil, but you're also Indian. Yes, you are from Nagaland, but you're also Indian.
And while you were growing up in Oslo, you went to engineering, you did engineering. Give us a very glimpse of just 4 5 minutes about where did you study, what did you study, and uh, your initial push towards, we're always interested in politics, doing something for the country. Just give us a deep dive into that.
When I was a youngster, the most biggest part of my life was for surf football. We played football, soccer all the time. That's the big summer sport in Norway, like cricket is in India.
India.
And I had the dream of becoming a big soccer star, which
Wow.
of course I had none of the talent for that.
And I have to ask you, which was your favorite soccer player by growing up?
By growing up, it was, I think, Pelé, which I still consider the greatest soccer player in Brazil. But now Norway is very proud to have probably the most famous soccer player of our time, Mr. Haaland. He was for sure the best soccer player in the world last year. And for a small nation like Norway to have such a famous star, of course, is incredible.
And from sports, becoming a soccer player, where did you land up?
Then I started more and more taking interest in politics, because realizing that not everyone in the world were as fortunate that we were in Norway, looking into the hunger in Africa, looking into wars and conflicts in other parts of the world, keeping people back, and getting into Norwegian politics, and later also getting into peacemaking. I was chief negotiator in the peace process in Sri Lanka, so then you got war and conflicts very close. I mean, a lot of people I knew there later died. You meet people one day, and 2 days after they've died in a terrorist attack or in a war episode or shot by the government. I was involved in Sri Lanka from 1998 to 2009 to the end of
2009.
in different
And
ways.
what was you were a minister at in the Norwegian government. You were part of the environmental part of it, climate change minister at that time.
I was in charge of environment and also all Norway's foreign development programs like support for African nations, or
And this is from which year to which year?
from 2005 to 2012.
2012. And when did United Nations happen?
And then after that, I was with the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, headquartered in Paris. And then after that, I was the executive director of United Nations Environment Program, which is in Nairobi in Kenya.
What was your time spent at the United Nations? What were the initiatives that it worked on? And personally, you were proud of the initiatives that during UN you worked on?
I think during my tenure in the UN, what I'm most proud of was really starting the global campaign against single-use plastic. Because when plastic was introduced in America back in the days, it was seen as the wonder material. It could solve so many purposes, keep food longer, defeat diseases in hospitals. It was a very useful material. But then we started overusing it, became addicted, and throw it out in nature. And because plastic has no role in nature, nor should we inhale, eat, drink microplastic and get it into our bodies. But for long it was not an issue, and I'm very proud that during my time in the UN we really put that front and center. Indeed, I also worked very closely with Prime Minister Modi because he took a lot of interest in that issue and put it high on the agenda also in India.
How do you manage so many things, like, as a politician, as an ex-politician, as a peacemaker? How do you manage? And we're talking with your colleague also. How do you manage time?
I think the most important issue is to have good colleagues, good people you work with, because I can do as much. If I try to do everything, try to understand everything, try to impose my will on everything, I will fail. But when you work with very good people who have competences I do not have and can help me manage time, help me reach out to people, you get so much more done.
We have to talk about your love for India. We have to talk about your passion, your love, and the love for the culture, the people of India. When we talk about India, the last decade, you've been, the last so many years, part of the entire climate change and sustainability, environmental part of it. How do you see India in the last 10 years, which has just dominated the entire renewable energy space? From 2012, it started, 2013, 14, it just kicked off on the sustainability part. How do you see India right now? taking a lead in global renewable energy? And also, that's one part. And the second part is, what is the perception of India in Europe and the other parts of the country taking a complete lead in renewable energy?
Let me take you into my kind of journey with India. I think it started with Indian food. Look,
Absolutely.
in Norway, when I was a child, we had no spices, absolutely zero. There is no spice in Norwegian nature, nor did we ever put it in to our food. But then some people came and started Indian restaurants in Oslo. By the way, they were from Punjab, and so it was Punjabi and Northern Indian style food. And I started going to those restaurants and took an enormous like in this food and became friendly with them. Even came to the wedding of the family members, which was in Kapurthala here in Punjab. So that was kind of the starting point for my great interest in India. But of course, then it was much wider: Indian politics, Indian culture, spirituality. I'm a close friend of Sadhguru and Sri Ravi Shankar. So it became much wider, but the starting point was food. And in this period, India has developed enormously. I'll be very honest, first time I visited India, I was scared because the poverty was so enormous, so everywhere. Couldn't walk anywhere without tens, hundreds of beggars around me, and you saw so many disabled, sick people around. Now, of course, it's a very different Bharat. I mean, it's not that there is not also still poverty in India, but it's a completely different situation. Infrastructure is much more modern, much faster roads, much better airport, much fewer beggars. You have a vast middle class, and you see India functioning at a completely different level. And the Prime Minister Modi in the last decade, India has also taken a new role at the world stage. Last year, India was the host of the G20, and it did it better than any other nation has ever done, put more energy into it, more dedication, put brilliant people like Amitabh Kant, who was the Sherpa, Jaishankar, the foreign minister, played a key role. So India really dominated the scene in a way India has not done, maybe since the 17th, many hundred years back, where India was also a dominant player, but for so long it was not central to global politics during colonialism and also during the Cold War.
How do you see India's, completely as a global leader in renewable energy, in building today? India produces, it's the lowest cost of solar power producer in the world today, right? One of the world's largest solar park, which you had visited a couple of days back, India is building. India has added close to 75 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity in the last decade or so. So what is your outlook on the India's dominance on renewable energy?
Not only solar energy in India is the cheapest in the world, it's the cheapest energy which has ever existed on planet Earth. It's a total revolution. As the price of solar has fallen by 90% in one decade, thanks to China and thanks to India, because that has been driving this green revolution. And by the way, the price of wind power has fallen more or less as much. And this has, of course, led India from somewhat in the back seats on green development into the front seats. For very long, the debate in India was stalled. It was, do we want to develop or do we want to take care of Mother Earth? And of course, nearly all Indians wanted to develop. But now the debate is, how can India develop, get everyone out of poverty, create a vast, good middle class, but at the same time, do it by going green. And India for sure will be the biggest solar nation in the world in the next decade, maybe after China. And there'll be a huge wind power. We go big into green hydrogen, and we will see an absolute total revolution. And look, this is also so economically meaningful for India, because India is importing 100% of the oil and gas, which means whenever you power a gasoline car, you send money to Russia, or to Saudi Arabia, or to my nation Norway, to some oil exporter. But if India is powering its electric vehicle by solar or wind, well, its sun is Indian, wind is Indian, you're using domestic resources, and you save money which then can be used for health or education or whatever.
Yeah, we talked about import. There's an interesting fact that India spends over $160 billion of foreign exchange every year on energy imports.
Exactly.
That's the latest figure that we have. But talking about sustainability, how do you see India's perception, whether it was the climate COP Paris Agreement where India took charge of their carbon emission goals, but how do you see India at a global level on meeting these climate change goals?
India is now a global leader in the climate talks in Dubai. Prime Minister Modi was giving the number one spot at the opening of the conference because everyone realized the importance of India for reaching the climate goals. No one should ever blame India for the climate crisis. Look, American emissions per capita up to today are 25 times Indians. So no one should blame India. That's completely ridiculous. But India sees an opportunity in going green. Good for the environment, but also good for jobs, prosperity in India, creating a better India by going green.
But there's a very interesting point that you raised on nobody should blame India. I have an interesting fact for you that, despite we are about 17%, India is about 17% of world's population, and India only contributes about 4% of the global carbon dioxide load. Per capita emission is approximately 2.2 tons, which is significantly lower than the global average of 6.3 tons. I want to ask you this, like as a global leader, you've been at the global stages talking about these topics. When you talk that India people should not blame India, but do you feel that when specifically when all these COP last COP, I was also at the COP UAE, there is a lot of emphasis by the by the West on committing more carbon energy goals, whereas they've already developed all those, the USAs and the Europe have already developed, they've come through the developing stage, and India is still in the developing stage. So it might need if they need coal for powering their needs and things like that. What does that kind of pressure look like when there is too much pressure that today Europe talks about carbon tax, right? Whereas if you see that all these developed countries have already developed, but India is now developing, how do you see that shift, and how do you see India stand on the global stage?
First of all, there is a lot of Western arrogance and ignorance. They don't understand and don't know and have no knowledge about the massive developments in India, nor do they have the same about what's happening in China. So they are arrogant and finger pointing, even if, of course, all the blame for the climate crisis rests with the West and a few other nations which have developed very, very fast. And of course, in the past, the view in India was that we have the right to develop and we need to do it based on coal. Because there was no other choice. No nation until recently became rich without coal. I mean, the UK, that's where the Industrial Revolution started. They had abundance of coal and they had waterways to take around the coal. Then America, then Japan, then Korea, then China. Everywhere, the rapid development into a prosperous society was based on coal. But now the price of solar is cheaper than coal. So it's a completely different ball game. No one did base their development on coal in the past because thought it was good for the environment or good for health. But it was the only way to prosperity. But now if you switch from coal to solar, you save money. It's cheaper. So for the first time in human history, there is a new development model possible. Environment and development, not environment or development, but environment and development. And solar and wind will you save money if you move from coal into solar and wind.
Yeah, and I think it can be only you that can just speak the truth about the Western arrogance and the stand. And I think it's so. It's for me as an Indian, it's so humbling for you, as a global leader, talking facts, right? Talking about, look, India is growing, like India is almost $3.5 trillion today, and India has to grow. All these Western economies have already grown and they've grew because of they met their energy requirements with coal. And now after 20, 30 years, you can't tell India, you are now growing, you stop coal, right? coal, I feel, will always be part of the mix. The question is, the part of the mix can reduce, and the part of renewable energy can increase. So I'm thankful to you that of talking about truth bombs, you've spoken so freely and so openly about the Western arrogance. But do you also feel that India is now very assertive? Like 20 years back, I was born in 1990, and while I was growing up, India was a very apologetic nation, I feel. And now, the youth of India is very assertive. Do you also feel that at the global stage that India now stand its ground on things that they feel is right for their country?
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of pride in India now. People feel that our nation is moving fast. We have the highest growth of any of any major nation in the world, and not only that, because high growth is important, but there also need to be a fair distribution of the wealth, and you see also poor people in India benefiting from this. For instance, through the digital revolution, which India is at the forefront of digitalization, and that benefits the poor because everyone now has a bank account. The other day I was in Madhya Pradesh, in some tribal area there, and I asked the tribal women there, how many of you have got an installation on your private bank account from Prime Minister Modi of cash? Everyone raised the hand. Everyone got that, because everyone now has a digital bank account. In the past, of course, if you send money to poor people, some middleman will eat from the cake all the way, and very little will at the end reach the poor people. So high growth, but also inclusive growth, also green growth, that gives India a lot of self-confidence, because at the end of the day, if you don't develop, if you don't grow fast, it's very, very hard to create that self-confidence in society. And also the policy of the last year, going more back to the roots, uplifting the Vedas and all histories of India, is also contributing to this self-confidence of India, which is just sound and good.
Do you also feel that when we talk about climate change, and I was reading one of the, during your time in one of the conferences, you spoke about India might be affected more during climate change because of the vast population. We are now the most populous country in the entire world. How do you see that? What measures should we take across the ecosystem to prevent that happening?
India, of course, need to also not just to fight climate change by, say, renewables, but also to prepare for climate change so that population is protected. The good news is that, of course, that is happening. Take neighboring Bangladesh as an example. But back in the 1970s, there was a cyclone hitting Bangladesh. It killed 500,000 people. That's probably the biggest natural catastrophe in known time in history. 500,000 people died. If a similar cyclone were to hit Bangladesh tomorrow, no one knows how many would die, but I guess in the hundreds. For sure not 1,000, maybe even in the tens. Why? Because every person in Bangladesh has a mobile phone. You will get a warning. Government has set up systems to bring people out of catastrophe areas. A number of houses at the coast is built on pillars so that the cyclone can pass under. So the society is much, much better prepared for natural catastrophes than in the past. There will be more of them, but they will be less deadly. Odisha, by the way, had a cyclone 3-4 years ago. I think 10 people died. This is very small for such a horrible weather event.
How do you see sustainable mobility? How do you see the EV sector in India grow? Do you see, again, like the oil economy here, we have a lot of dependency on lithium imports also and the battery cell chemistry. So how do you see the EV sector in India grow and sustainable mobility take its main course?
By 2030, nearly all new cars sold will be electric. And on this, I'm in absolutely no doubt, because I've seen the change in my own home country. 90% of all new cars now are electric. And I have never met a person who made a shift from a gasoline to electric who say, oh, I want to go back. No one wants that. And that's why they're so certain that this shift will happen, because it's not just good for the environment, everyone knows. Not good for the pollution in the cities, everyone knows. but the electric car is a much better car, much less noise, much better technology, much better for extreme warm weather, which you have in some parts of India, or extreme cold weather, which you may have in the Himalayas, because you can preheat or pre-cool the car before you get into it. So it's a superior technology which will take over. Look, when the world made the shift, say, from horsepower into railways or cars, was not that some committee came together and made a resolution that the world should change. It was simply Daimler and Benz back in the days in Stuttgart in Germany who invented the gasoline car at the time, and then change started. When we made the IT revolution again, there was not a committee of the center committee of the world deciding we should do it. It was Steve Jobs at the time inventing the smartphone over there in California. And the renewable revolution, the car revolution, will not be decided in climate talks in Dubai or wherever. It will be decided by all those companies who spearhead the new technology, which is better for people, better for planet, and for that reason, for sure, will be used by everyone. Companies like yourself, but of course there are many of them, and in particular in China and India.
Yeah. There's a very interesting quote, what you said. It reminds me that, that the most powerful thing in this universe is that idea whose time has come, and you can't stop the momentum. But talking about EV sector in India, how do you feel about the battery technology? Do you feel that, importing, there have been a lot of news in the past that there have been a lot of reserves that are found of lithium in India now, in Jammu and other places. But how do you really see the two parts? One is the battery, the cell chemistry, battery technology, and the second is the whole problem on the charge anxiety, on the charging infrastructure. How do you see, what measures should India take to overcome that?
First of all, battery technology will dominate the world. At the moment, China is totally dominating the battery technology in the world. I mean, 70% of all new electric batteries are made in China, and nearly all the rest in South Korea. So these two nations have nearly all batteries. Of course, India cannot base its automobile industry just on importing batteries from China or Korea. It needs to build its own infrastructure to create jobs. I mean, make it in India, as the Prime Minister is saying. So make sure these jobs are created in India is a critical issue. Except for that, this will move very, very fast, and the Chinese companies are leading this revolution. But when it comes to charging, you need someone to help building the charging infrastructure from the beginning. That must be government or big companies who help their employees, but also maybe society. But in Norway, the government started making charging. Now it's no need for that because it's taken over by the market. Everyone running a petrol station is also setting up charging, because when people come for charging, they will also buy some hamburger or some cake or a coffee. So they make the money from selling all the others by providing the charging.
Talking about EV, talking about China, BYD has recently surpassed Tesla in terms of their EV car. So I will have to ask you before I move towards green hydrogen, which is your favorite car, BYD or Tesla?
I would prefer a BYD.
BYD, and any reasons for that?
I admire that company. I think it's fantastic. It's a fantastic high-tech company. They may also get competitors like Huawei, which is, as you may know, it's a tech company rather than it's like Apple starting making cars. And I think what we do not know for the future is who will make our cars, because half the value of an electric car is the battery. Maybe 20-30% of the rest is the value of the high-tech entertainment. Technology, yeah. Very soon we will see cars running autonomous with their own. Yeah. So what made the money for the Volkswagen or General Motors of this world? That is now maybe 20, making the car, that's maybe 20% of the value. The rest is the battery and the high tech. So whether it will be the battery makers making the cars, or maybe the Googles and Amazons and Alibabas and Tencent, to make American and Chinese example, making the cars, we don't know at this stage. But I'm not sure. I will not put all my money on the traditional car makers. I think they are in a very difficult spot.
Very interesting point. BYD also comes from a battery technology. They were also, I think, had some background in kind of electronics in the
Yeah,
past.
BYD is the second biggest producer of electric batteries in the world, next to CATL, which is another Chinese company. But CATL is making just batteries. BYD is an integrated company making batteries, making cars, also making some light rail, and a number of other products. It's a very, very impressive
Very
company.
interesting point that you've said that, people that are manufacturing batteries will pivot, and BYD is a classic example. What is Tesla, you feel, is doing right or wrong?
For very, very long, if we wanted an electric car in the West, there was no other alternative. Because whatever you think of Elon Musk, he made all the right decisions. Ford and General Motors, they were resisting change. They were stuck in their old ways of doing it. And here comes this innovator and completely turning the business on its head. And all of a sudden, Tesla was more worth than all the other car companies in the United States combined. So it shows that exactly what you say, when you are there with the right idea at the right time, you turn everything on its head.
Is there any advice, because we'll post this on X also now, Twitter is X now, but any advice for Elon Musk or Tesla that you want to, anything that they should be doing, any message, because we'll post this on their platform as well?
No, I mean, they should for sure continue to pursue more and better electric cars. They should work with the American government for this to happen faster in America. Otherwise, I mean, sorry to say, China will take over the entire market, because they're running much faster than America at this point.
One of your passions.
And I will also add, it would be good with Tesla investing in India. They have made a huge factory, as you may know, in Shanghai. They made one in Berlin, in Germany, and they're planning in Gujarat, as far as I know. Yeah.
So I think these are good words of advices to Elon Musk, and I'm sure that with your exposure. But I think just my last remarks on EV, I genuinely feel that what BYD has done in the past some years is just phenomenal. The kind of traction that Tesla had, the kind of brand strength it had, and here comes BYD, which is just focusing on execution, making the car more cheaper and providing it to the mass. So I think it's going to be, and I think that point which you have raised, that not necessary that the car manufacturers would be the traditional makers, that they would pivot. Anybody can really come and disrupt the market. So very exciting times for the EV sector. So moving on is your obsession and passion on green hydrogen. We at a company level at Hatek, we're also doing many things on green hydrogen. But I have to ask you, what are your comments on green hydrogen? How will it really play an important role in the decarbonization of the world?
My view, which I think is shared by much more knowledgeable people than myself, is that basically everything light will be run by a battery, by charging. I mean, of course, every scooter, every three-wheeler, every car, every small truck, maybe even big trucks, they will be run by just by charging and be fully electric. But there are some sectors which are much harder to make electric, like those demanding a very high temperature, like steel and cement and fertilizer, and those who are very energy intensive, like shipping or aviation. Look, we are still quite some distance from sending a ship from Mondra to Rotterdam just charged by electricity. But of course, green hydrogen or ammonia is a solution for that. Another example, aviation. In my nation, Norway, nearly everyone has been up in an aircraft. In India, it's still a small minority who has ever been into an aircraft. Should anyone tell the Indian people, oh no, for the sake of the environment, you should not go flying? It's a complete non-starter. Because every Indian also wants to be able to go for a flight, to see neighbors or friends or family, or to go abroad to see other countries. Well, those flights need to be powered, small aircraft, maybe by electricity, otherwise by green hydrogen or biofuels or other more environment-friendly substances. And green hydrogen is a potential way of powering large-scale aircraft in the future, so that it's done in an environment-friendly way again, so that all Indians can also have the experience of going by air.
But then why doesn't Nitin Gadkari goes on a hydrogen car to the parliament? Why doesn't he go on an EV? Because if EV is the very no-brainer, but do you think that the debate between an EV car and a hydrogen car, what is the debate on that? What do you feel will win?
From what I can see from outside, he's one of the most dynamic ministers, really trying to move India very, very fast, really a true leader. And I think he does it because he wants to make the point that green hydrogen is very, very important for the future. It's not about whether exactly that car will go by plug-in charging or by green hydrogen, but to make a point to the people of India about the importance of green hydrogen. He's a type of political leader leading from the front.
And the whole debate of EV car versus hydrogen car, which side are you on?
I think for the cars, they will be all electric.
Electric. And on the mobility, do you think that heavy trucks and buses would be, apart from hydrogen, green hydrogen replacing grey hydrogen in steels and cements and other large industries? Do you also feel that in large trucks and buses, where battery density is a big issue, that's where green hydrogen buses or trucks might disrupt?
It may have a role for the really large, heavy trucks and buses, but that's not yet clear on. The future can tell whether also they will go fully electric or be run by green hydrogen. Where I'm more certain is that green hydrogen will play a role in shipping and in aviation, and for sure in some of these industries.
And decarbonization, the refining and the fertilizers and all that.
And of course, but to make green hydrogen, of course, you need a huge amount of green energy, otherwise there is no green hydrogen. And that's why it's so really inspiring to go with Adani to the Gujarat desert.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
on Twitter you posted it.
It's incredible. I mean, the company is setting up the biggest combined solar and wind plant anywhere in the world. As far as I know, bigger than anything in China. To produce as much energy right in the center of this desert as the combined energy of all hydropower in my nation, Norway, just by one plant. But added, he has also huge ambitions for even bigger production of solar and wind energy for green hydrogen, which then can be exported from Mundra to, say, Korea or Japan, nations which have difficulties making all the renewable energy at home.
India set roughly about 5 million tons of annual green hydrogen production capacity by 2030. Any three tips for the Indian government or the people listening? What are the three things that you're also the chairman of the Green Hydrogen Organization, right? So any three things that we as a community, we as a country should do right, these three things?
One, agree with other nations what is the definition of green hydrogen, because if there is no agreement on that, it's hard to do trade. I mean, India should develop this for its own purposes, but should also sell to Europe or say to Korea and Japan. And then we need to agree on the rules of the game. Green Hydrogen Organization has made a standard for this, which can be adopted. Second, you need to make a lot of green energy available from solar and wind. If there's no solar or wind or hydropower, or for that matter nuclear energy available, there can be no green hydrogen. And lastly, a very deep conversation between the government and the companies as to how this can be financed, because I mean, when there is no absolute certainty on offtake in the future, banks are reluctant to finance. But on the other hand, those who maybe off-takers won't finance now, and you may have a mixture of public and private money for this to happen. Global rules, much more much more renewable power, and focus on financing.
You're also the chairman of the Development Roundtable in Green Hydrogen Organization, and as a board member also in the International Hydropower Association. Tell us something about that, our viewers and listeners who are listening to this. What exactly are you doing there? What is the overall vision for the organization?
The huge vision is a tripling of renewable power in the world in the next up to 2030. Is that possible? Yes, for sure it is. China has already done it. I mean, China is now more than 60% of all renewable energy of every sort in the world. So if India, Europe, others can do the same, we will see a massive increase. And of course, what's important is that when you do it at big scale, price comes down, it becomes cheaper, and when it's cheaper, you can do it even more. So I'm sure we will have a huge revolution in green energy in the time to come. And then secondly, to integrate this, because even in the best places in India, the sun is not shining all the time. No place the wind is blowing exactly the same way every day, 365 days a year. So you need battery. And then hydropower can be the battery. I saw that just a couple of days ago in Madhya Pradesh. In Madhya Pradesh at Omkareshwar, they're now being the largest floating solar in the world. I think you are involved in this. But next door, they will make a battery, a pumped storage battery in the Narmada River, pumping up water. When the sun is shining, you pump out the water. When there's no sun, you release the water. So we have a fully integrated system of solar and hydropower as the battery. That is the future.
Sir, you work with Afroz also, and I have to talk about Afroz. He's someone who's worked so greatly in terms of I think the largest cleanly drive that he did in Bombay Beach. Tell us something about in terms of the work that you're doing with Afroz, and how do you see that the environment being impacted, because it's clearly linked to the environmental impact. So tell us something about that.
Afroz is a hero of the environment.
100%.
And, yeah. One day he looked out of his window from the 10th floor and he watched the Versova beach, which was the beach also of his childhood. What did he see? Absolutely horrible plastic pollution. I've been there. It's unbelievable. It was 0.5 meter of hard-packed plastic. What did he do? He didn't send a letter to Prime Minister Modi or to the Chief Minister of Maharashtra and told them to do something. He just went down to the beach and started picking plastic. First there were 2, an old neighbor joined him. Then there were 10, then there were hundreds. And at the end of the day, there were hundreds of thousands of mainly young people, but people of all ages, cleaning plastic at the beaches of Versova and also more lately at the Miti River in Mumbai. And that also something interesting happened, because when people poured out like that, well, then politicians came and said, maybe we should help you. And then business came and said, maybe we should give you some more heavy equipment so we can do this faster and more efficient. So it created an absolute mass movement of people, but with support of political leaders and business leaders in Mumbai. And I hope it can inspire similar developments in other parts of India. A very amazing city in India is Indore. So many times mentioned as the cleanest city in India.
Chandigarh was the cleanest city, and then now Indore is.
Oh, sorry.
No, but Indore is the number one since I think now 5-6 years now. Indore is
unbelievable. There's no, I mean, if you walk the city center of Indore, you see absolutely not a paper in the street. So wonderful.
No, but I think you're absolutely correct. Afroz is a hero, and I think the work that he's done, and now you see, celebrities coming in, cleaning, picking up garbage, picking up plastics from beaches. I think you're the chairman of the foundation also with Afroz.
No, he asked me to be the chair of his board, and of course happily agreed. And as you are right, I mean, but he started it. But then later, cricket stars or Bollywood stars,
absolutely.
They all wanted to be part of it. But it showcased a very important thing, what Mahatma Gandhi said. You need to be the change you want to see in this world. Afroz started just picking by himself. If it had been alone, nothing would happen. But by starting picking, he mobilized more and more and more and more people. And a mass movement, which is so powerful.
Sir, almost we can talk for hours and hours, but I think I have some very interesting last two parts which I wanted to ask you. What are your 3 wishes for the future?
For the world?
For the world.
Number 1 is peace. Because it's so horrible when people die from violence, but also we are so distracted, we are not able to solve other problems. Second is environment. We need to take much better care of Mother Earth. That's so deep in Indian tradition and culture, going back to the Vedas also. And thirdly, development. Every single human being has the right to education, to health, to a decent life, and for sure not to die young from a disease which is completely incurable. But all these 3, peace, environment, and development, are possible for us to deliver if we work hard and smart, and particularly if we work together. I was sorry to add, but I was asked in Madhya Pradesh to join what is called the Center of Oneness. I set up a huge statue there of Adi Shankara, which was an Indian sage from the 700s. He started walking from Madhya Pradesh. He went thrice around India, started walking at the age of 12, and is one of the greatest spiritual leaders of India. But his main philosophy was oneness. We are one. One human and nature, but also one everyone in Bharat, but of course everyone, China, India, America, Europe, Africa, we are all one. That idea, I think, should be leading us in this century.
You know, you started with food. You said that your love for India started with food, and we're going to end this podcast with asking you this or that, right? It's a small game that we'll play. And so my first question is, tandoori chicken or butter chicken?
Tandoori chicken.
Okay. Pele or Ronaldo?
Pele.
You've already answered. BYD or Tesla?
BYD.
India or Norway?
India.
Perfect. And my last is your message to a 18-year-old or a 21-year-old boy or girl, Indian, listening to you.
My message is that you are very lucky because you are born at the best of times in India. India will grow very fast, become a much bigger player at the global scene, much more prosperous nation and much greener nation. But of course, this can only happen if you are part of it. So look into what you can do. Don't ask everyone else to fix problems, but look into what you can do to create this beautiful green Bharat. Can you plant trees? Can you put up solar panels at your school or university? Can you influence your school comrades by social posting or making opinions? Can you avoid using single-use plastic? What are all the small steps you can do to be part of this great evolution of a wonderful, more prosperous, better place in India?
Thank you, Erik, for doing this. Thank you for coming down to Chandigarh for recording this session. I'm so grateful for the work that you've been doing, inspiring the entire young generations to build a sustainable world for the future generation. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Chandravad.
Thank you.